Hi and welcome to Fridays with Fenning. You know, my mum, Eunice, is a remarkable woman. She's been married to my dad for over 60 years. She's a great cook and her custard cream biscuits are to die for. You know, we hardly ever went out for meals when I was growing up because why would we when my mum's cooking was so good? She's been a great mum to my brother Phil, my sister Judith and I. And when we started the church back in 1992, my mum soon became known as Grandma Church as she looked after the babies while the services took place. She used to work full-time for an accountancy business, but when Sarah, my first wife, was diagnosed with cancer, she gave up her job to help look after our children. And her support during and after Sarah's illness was outstanding. She used to do all of our washing and cook meals. She would clean the oven. She'd take the kids to their swimming lessons. She'd babysit during hospital visits. She'd sew name tags into the kids' school clothes. She was amazing, and I wouldn't have coped very well without her. I remember when Sarah and I got married, just before our honeymoon, Sarah moved her stuff into the house. And while we were away, my mum collected all of mine and the kids and Sarah's dirty laundry and washed it. And Sarah was horrified when she realised that my dad had been hanging out all of her underwear on the washing line. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure what my dad thought of it either. But my mum has always been so practical, so active and so helpful. You see, my mum's love language is acts of service. She shows that she loves by doing helpful things that other people really appreciate. So my mum's custard cream biscuits have made their way to Africa when Alice, my daughter, did her gap year there. Sam would often head off to uni with a box of his favourite biscuits too. And for my mum, love is shown through what she does. She doesn't often verbalise her love. In fact, she rarely says, "I love you" to me. And she doesn't give out lots of hugs, but she doesn't need to because I have never doubted for one moment about whether she loves me and the depth of her love. You see, to my mum, love's an action. And acts of service is a very practical and powerful love language. It's choosing to do things that you know the other person would love you to do. You know, at its core, its language is about demonstrations of love. Now, whether this is your primary love language or not, it's important to learn this love language and recognise it, especially within close relationships. Because this love language sometimes needs to break through the stereotypical roles that we easily inherit or fall into from our upbringing, for what we've seen our parents do. You know, I was very used to this love language from both Sarah and my mum. And so when I married Sarah, I presumed it would be the same. So I went to travel to the States within a few months of marrying, and I asked Sarah if she'd help me pack my suitcase. I kind of expected her to do it without a thought, but her response was rather short. She just looked at me and said, "I'm not that sort of wife." I've always packed my own cases since then. But when Sarah and I got married, we kind of fell into different roles that were our jobs to do to make the house run smoothly. You know, we didn't sit down and decide them, we just took them on. And those roles then became expectations. So cooking, mowing the lawn, shopping, heavy lifting, unscrewing jars, they are my department. And paperwork, dog walking and dog care, house cleaning and gardening are Sarah's. And what acts of service does is break through those expectations and offer to help out to give the other person a break. Now, I'm a slow reader, and so Sarah will sometimes offer to read a chapter or even a book, make notes that then help me prep my talks. Now, she doesn't need to do that. It's not her role, but I am so grateful when she does. And it's a way that she shows that she loves me. And if I walk the dog before Sarah gets home from work, which then allows her just to have a cup of tea and unwind, I tell you, that is so valued by Sarah. And if I help with the gardening, it brings us closer. Why? Well, it's because for Sarah, these are big things and demonstrations of my love to her. Now, sometimes she asks me to walk the dog and do the gardening, and I do it, but it's not always out of an expression of love. You see, love is a choice, not an expectation or a demand. Look, Here's a thought for you. Why don't you sit down with someone you love, whether your partner, your spouse, could be your parent or even a friend, and ask them what 3 or 4 things you could do for them that would make them feel loved, valued, or supported. It's not about you taking over, it's about lightening their load. It's acts of kindness. Now think about it for yourself. What could they do for you that would make you feel loved? I mean, talk about it together. It's not about cajoling or making demands. It's about finding practical ways to show that you love each other. And if acts of service isn't a primary love language of yours, then you have to learn how to speak this language, and talking about it will really help. And if it is your love language, but it's not theirs, then helping them understand can really help to grow your relationship. So maybe if you don't usually cook, you could choose to cook a meal over this weekend. Or you could do that job that's been waiting to be done, that you've been nagged about in the past. You could get on with that this weekend. And Mum, if you're watching, if you have time for a bit of custard cream biscuit baking, only joking, kind of. So my question for you is this: how can you demonstrate love in a practical way this weekend? You know, we all have the capacity to speak the 5 love languages of words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, thoughtful gifts, and physical touch. But have you worked out what your primary love languages are? You know, the ones that make you feel loved and valued. If not, then why not Google Love Languages Test and just pick a test to see which your first love language is. And if you're in a relationship, then do it together and exchange results. Honestly, it has proved so helpful for Sarah and I, and we often still need reminding. And so I just want to encourage you to give it a go. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend.